Well, good morning, good morning, good morning.
It's been too long. Our listeners have just been just pining for us to have another episode.
Pining away, that's the
Oh,
word.
I keep getting that.
All right,
When's the next one?
right.
When's the
We
next?
are here. Well, let's see. Last week I was on the Appalachian Trail doing two trips back to back. Those went really well. We had it. This rarely happens, but this is a really beautiful thing. Speaking of our song today, Sliding Away, we had rain on both trips, but it happened overnight.
Okay.
So we never had to set up camp in the rain or take down camp in the rain, which is great. And then as we were hiking, it was overcast, it was lovely. So both trips turned out great, super duper.
Awesome.
Before that, all right, so this
We
there's
live in Bruce world.
there's so much going on right now. There's just
Right.
there's so much to talk about.
There's so.
So I'm doing a little testing thing right now. So I went to the doctor last week, before no, the week before last. It's all just
Okay.
running together. My blood pressure was lower than it's ever been in the history of my life. So it's like 117 over 72. And they're like,
Beautiful.
they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm living on a farm, which is a different thing.
Farm
I
living.
only drive into town twice a week. No, literally, I drive into town, which is what our grandparents used to say. And I
Going to
realized
town for supplies.
last week I'm turning into Grandpa Martin.
Okay.
For years, I thought I was going to turn into Grandpa Rice. You know, when I was young, that didn't happen. I've turned into Grandpa Rotten.
Burton.
Well, he used to stumble with it for sure.
But he didn't drink as much as
No, that's true.
Mr. Burton.
Actually, he drank in his earlier years.
He
I
did.
flip-flopped it, or in the later
We
years.
drank in our later
In
years.
our later years. But it's like I'm always working on farm tractors. We have now, we have 4 John Deeres on the property. So,
I love it.
like a John Deere tractor that I bought like super cheap for like 6,500 bucks. That's just, I mean, it's just killer, and it reminds me of Grandma Martin's tractor. You know, it's like a '90s tractor, but it's amazing how little they change over the years.
And you got a bush hog for it?
I bought a bush hog for it. We got a zero turn. We got the riding mower, and then a month ago I bought John Deere Gator for like 2,300. Just bought it because it needed a lot of work. So after putting a battery, starter, solenoid, fuel pump, carburetor, choke cable, throttle cable, and a lot of springs, and then adjusted the clutch a little bit, I got a Gator. Instead of spending $10,500, I got one for three. All that together.
That's awesome.
So love and love. Anyway, back to my experiment. So I'm like, all right, what is the difference? Okay, so I have less stress in my life in the sense that I'm only, like I said, I come into town twice a week, so I'm not taking on as much counseling, which can be stressful in its own way.
Sure. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not in Huntsville traffic every day, I think, which can make your blood pressure skyrocket. I drove in this morning intentionally. You'll love this because at some point that'll be one of our songs. We'll do life in the fast lane. So I want to talk about life in the slow lane.
Yep.
But I drove in the slow lane all day today. Came in. I got in within like 3 minutes of what I normally would, driving super fast. And you know what my pulse rate was on my watch? 51. You know what makes a difference? And I realize how often I'm putting stress on myself for no apparent reason.
Hmm.
The book we talked about last year, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. Well, I read the book, but I wasn't really practicing.
It didn't take.
It didn't take. It took a minute.
Right. It had some wonderful
I was
concepts.
trying not to hurry in terms of processing it, so I was processing it very slowly. 6 months later, I'm like, this is great. And Roger, it wasn't that hard to do. I know what you're thinking. You drove in the slow lane all day. I mean, behind people. And Roger, I was like 6 car lengths back, probably ticking off everyone behind me. Like, what? Why won't he get up on top of people? Because that's the way I used to think. So, right, for all of our listeners, I'm like, try this whole slowing down thing and see what it does to your blood pressure, your pulse, your overall health, all that good stuff. So
Okay.
that was just my recap from the last 4 weeks. How about you? Because it's
That's
been, I
our
think, 4 weeks since
that's
we've.
our health episode. That's our
That's
health
all.
tip
All right, good
of
talk.
the
We're done.
We're here to make your life better. Slow down and be like Bruce.
Okay. Mr. Rolling Stones with the Mick Jagger tongue
Yeah,
rolling out.
baby.
So what have you done for the last 4 weeks? Well, we've not been podcasting.
Well, I picked up a few concert t-shirts.
Oh, you gotta tell our viewers about this. This is too good.
So, long story short,
Roger hit the mother load.
different ones of you will experience this, but like, yeah, so I buy and sell on eBay, but I'm going to auctions, that kind of estate sales, that kind of stuff. So a couple weeks ago, came across a kind of a last minute auction that came up. Apparently, there was a house that was getting ready to close, and the last second they need to clear all the stuff out of it. Well, it turns out the stuff
That's always good for Roger.
they needed to clear out of it was a massive, massive collection of music. This guy had over 4,000 albums, vinyl albums. He had over 50,000 CDs.
Well, 50,000.
Yes.
I have no place in my brain for that. I can't even imagine 5,000 CDs. I think when Marlene and I had like 300, we were like over the top. That's just crazy, though.
I bought over 5,000 of his.
Oh my gosh.
But
he was obviously a member of Columbia House. You remember that? You know, you got tip CDs every month or something crazy?
No, because he was a true collector. He wasn't going to be collecting that crap.
Okay.
No, I mean, he was like a guy who was into music and CDs like when they first came out, variety of stuff. Now, again, I got like 40 or 50 concert tees that he had, a very cool bunch of posters that he had. But like he's got rare and obscure. I'm still coming across these artists. He was very much into progressive rock and classic rock. And but then he'd have these like 24 karat gold plated, which I've learned gives for an audiophile the purest sound. A gold plated, it's like the pinnacle of.
That's nuts.
So anyway, but it's one of those things where not many people knew about the sale. They were selling thing in massive lots. Okay, this room, this whole closet and everything in it, you bid on it.
You don't know what you're getting. You just because
I went to a
enough time to see all.
Yeah, you go and you try and look through a few things. It's one of those ones where I bought 5 large lots. I would have bought more.
Knowing what you know now.
But I'm super grateful. I mean, it'll be the best sale, hands down, probably I've ever had. So it's been fun.
Isn't it fun when God just does that kind of stuff? It reminds me of the story of the guy who had a banner year and he had so much new crops coming in. He was like, what am I going to do with all this? And he said, tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tear down the old barn and we're going to build newer, bigger barns, then store it all up. What about you, Roger? Going to build some bigger barns?
This feels like a setup.
I decided.
All I know is
throw it out there.
I bought a bunch of stuff from a guy who had a big barn.
Yeah, big barn.
So that part worked out for me.
Right.
And I'm selling them to people who probably have bigger barns. So anyway.
Collecting in general is funny to me. Just collecting, because I'm not be more wired for collecting.
Mm-hmm.
And again, not a bad thing, good thing. It's just different. I don't hang on to much of anything. It's like, I was even thinking of how many like vehicles I've been through over the last 40 years. I just don't hang on to stuff.
But what you would resonate with this guy, because this guy you love music that sounds great. Like,
oh yeah,
you have like 85 speakers in your car.
I have 19 speakers in my car.
So because you want a particular quality. Well, this is what I've learned, particularly about there's vinyl people that just love the vinyl sound, but the CD sound with certain mixes can get you that for an audiophile that loves the sound or particular mixing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've learned that different CDs, this was mixed by a particular guy, even a same album, but it gets mixed by a different person.
Yeah.
And so fascinating. And like like these 24 karat gold. I listed a few yesterday, well, they're selling like 80 to $100 each CDs.
That's
See, anyway,
crazy.
so but but what you would also love, what I love is we're big music lovers, and I'm learning more
Which is
now
why we're doing the podcast on music.
exactly on music, and maybe that's the transition into, what we're doing this year. But this so fits that. It's just so much fun. I'm learning, just like with our song today, Sliding Away by Paul Simon, just looking more into that.
Well, and I will say this about one last thing about having
Yes,
19 speakers because it is overkill. It's like a Bang
right.
Olufsen system. But all the songs that you listened to as a kid and you never knew what the lyric was, you just sort of made them up
Right.
and just sort of went with
Oh
it.
gosh, yes.
You can hear every lyric. Like I can understand what Bob Dylan and Ozzy Osbourne are actually saying.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's different, and that is something that I appreciate.
it's
Where
truly
you
miraculous.
have all the sound of the music and each individual instrument and all of it together, but you can still hear the vocals perfect,
Hmm.
like the guy or the gal singing in your ear. So
Yes.
that you're right. I do love good music. I love it.
This guy was
Yeah.
he loved that piece of it. And there is a piece that CDs, um, yeah, fit
So
with that.
so let's talk about Paul Simon. Interesting song selection. I remember when I was in, gosh, probably middle school.
Well, what's interesting, that song came out in 77.
Okay.
So I was 16.
Yep.
You
I
were
would have been
what,
14.
13?
Yep.
Yeah.
13, 14.
Um, I love the song. I remember, um, so a couple quick factoids looking this up. Um, the song, okay, came out 77. I always loved this kind of, Paul Simon didn't like the song a lot. He didn't think it was that good.
Okay.
He was going to put it on his Still Crazy After All These Years, another great song,
Yeah.
um, album. And you say he just didn't like it. So he's putting together the next album was a greatest hits album that he had to complete for Columbia House, for Columbia or something. He had to complete this, and he did it as a throw-in.
So
So
Sliding Away, which wasn't the greatest hit,
it was a filler song.
but it became.
It went to number five, um,
Interesting.
but it wasn't. He didn't. Which I was fascinated about artists. He wasn't.
But here's the thing. The song, the lyric in particular. Like musically, it's okay. I mean, that would
Yes.
definitely be mild for the genre that I
Oh
enjoy.
yes.
Definitely very mild, but I remember enjoying the song. But it is a song about the human condition that so many people can relate to.
It just
The
resonates.
nearer you get to your destination, the more you're sliding away. It's a visual. You can see it, the person climbing the hill and just sliding. And I realized for me, as I listened to it, because I listened to it multiple times this morning, I'm like, yeah, man, it feels like a little bit of a song about futility.
And life not ever fully matching up. There's these what four verses, three, four verses,
Four
four
verses.
verses,
Yep.
but each one is a story.
Exactly. Yes.
And you think about even how what he could do. Think about how much story you paint. I know a father who had a son. He longed to tell him all the reasons for the things he'd done. He came a long way just to explain. He kissed his boy as he lay sleeping and turned and headed home again. I mean, there's a movie in a single verse.
Right. The father leaves the son and I guess the mom
There's some
for
there's
reasons
reasons.
unknown.
But
But
he
he
wants
can't.
he wants to connect with that kid again, but he's
Can't.
disappointed. It's too long. It's too late. I'm going to give it a shot.
He's sleeping. Shame.
And then he never has the conversation.
Oh no, that was terribly.
Right.
I lapsed into depression on that. But there was the first verse I didn't 100%. I know where he was going because he talks about this man who has a wife, Dolores, that he loves so much that he's afraid he's going to disappear. It's like your love, he wears his passion for her like a thorny crown. So there's this like beauty and agony all in it. But he says, my love for you is so overpowering. I'm afraid that I might disappear. I didn't know if he was saying he was going to lose himself because he loved her so much he would just do anything for her and not he would lose himself, or if he was afraid he would disappear from her life like she would leave. Whatever it was, I realized he couldn't enjoy the thing that he had because of the fear of loss, whichever fear he was relating to.
No, and I think that's so funny. I have an entirely different take.
Yeah, well, tell me, because
So,
it's an interpretive song,
well, right,
but it's a story.
right. It's a story. And if I'm thinking about what here is, he is, it's a sarcasm. Where's his passion for his woman like a thorny crown? He loves her so much he leaves her. In other words, oh, I'm dear lovely until I just disappear, until
Gotcha.
I'm gone.
He's
That it's
afraid of the
a
commitment.
divorce. My love for you is so overpowering. I just think I'll just up and disappear. So I think, yeah, this broken promises, regret
Mhm.
in the one song of, I mean, the one verse about a good day ain't got no rain. A bad day's when I lie about around and think about the things that might have been.
And now that was the lyric that I related personally to the most. And I was going to ask you if you've ever done it, because well, people may not know. So I'm a dreamer. Dreamers are people that always have ideas, visions. We're always looking forward. We have this unique ability to see something and sort of and sometimes bring it into existence, but then sometimes not,
Yep.
depending on how hard or how far we pursue that thing. But I have found myself, and it is a bad day, sometimes laying in bed at night or on a walk, just thinking about what might have been if I had made different, in my 60s now, I look back and I'm like, what might have been had I done this? What might have been had I stayed with this church? What would that have turned? Because
Hmm.
I never was at any church longer than 7 years. What might have
Yeah.
been if I had been a
Yep.
pastor somewhere for 30 years?
Hmm.
What might that have looked like?
Yep.
What would my journey look like if I had pursued car racing when I was young? Those things.
Yeah.
It's so funny, even as an adult, but I've thought it for years. I would have loved to be a race car driver, not because of the celebrity of it, just because I love driving
Sure.
fast.
Yep.
I'm a little bit reckless. I have a very high tolerance for risk, but I understand cars. I feel cars. I don't just drive cars. I feel what they're doing. I feel what the tires are doing. I know when I'm at the limit because I've been beyond the limit of adhesion before when you spin around and done that multiple
I've been
times.
in one of your vehicles when you lost adhesion.
Roger was in the vehicle when we lost adhesion. But part of racing is you've got to be willing to get on the edge. If you're going to win, you got to be willing to get it on, get on the race. But it's so funny. And then I thought, even laughingly about Grandpa Rice, I thought for a while I might become a crusade evangelist. What
Hmm.
would that look like? Because that seems like that would be significant in the kingdom of heaven. Thousands of
Hmm.
people trusting Christ, and I'm like, I think about those things sometimes, and it can create a bad day if you're not content with the life that you have lived to this point.
Yeah.
So the difference for me was because when I listened to that, I'm like, okay, I can relate to that statement. The difference was I'm super happy with the life that I've lived.
Hmm.
I can't explain it. I've told you many times, if I die tomorrow,
Yeah.
literally, I have had such an amazing life by the grace of God. And
Yep.
so many opportunities, so many places, so many people, so many different things, which is, and as we get older, we norm in. That is who I am. I was never going to be the pastor that was 30 years at a church
Right.
because it's not who I am.
Right.
It's not even how
Yep.
God wired me. I mean, I'd had people talk to me before about being a quitter and some of those things when I was in my 40s and so. And I wondered about that, but I just felt like God spoke into that and was like, no, Bruce, you're not slip sliding away. Your path was starter. I want you to start things.
Yep.
I want you to start things. When I think about Cornerstone and what it's doing now, and like
Hmm.
I hiked with a guy last week that is actually speaking, doing talks at Cornerstone on toxic charity. He's like, I had no idea you were one of the founders. I'm
Yeah.
like, that's what I do. I
And
start things, then turn them over
then
to
move on.
people a whole lot smarter than me.
The Apostle Paul did that.
Same thing with
Right.
pastoring. Right. It was so anyway, norming into that this is who I am. But there are
I
there
like
are
that. Yeah.
there are spaces in my life where I felt like I slided away. You're close to the destination, and then you're like, yeah, we missed that.
To me, why it resonates is I mean, this is the biblical story. The biblical story is that we're a combination of moving forward and slipping back, that life, there's glory in groaning, that there are the moments with days with no rain. There's this mix. Um, Actually, the illusion that life is always going to be good gets blown up. And I think that's part of what the song is about. And it's true. The idea, even if we get to a point, oh, I finally made it. It's smooth sailing from here. Nope.
We
Nope.
think we're gliding down the highway, but in reality, we're
slip
sliding
away. And um, so I think it resonates. Part of the resonance is it's true experientially, but it captures what's true about life, that there's this mix. And you have to come to some kind of peace with the groaning, with the slipping, with the things that don't work out, with
the unattainable destination.
Mm.
Because part of that, no, a big part of the song that resonated with me was this idea that you're because it's in the chorus every single time.
Yeah.
The nearer you are to the destination, the more you slide away. It's unattainable. In other words, as you listen to the song, you never quite get there. But I'm like, what you're saying, it's absolutely true. We never arrive in that sense.
On this side, because we were made for,
And God's always got more work to do. It was
Yes.
Meeting with a client last night. I was talking about even this sanctification process and how, and I don't know how it works for everyone else. I just know like in my journey of following Jesus that began at age 25, it's like early on God worked on a lot of my behavioral issues because I had plenty of them. Just kind of behavior.
This is true.
Actions.
Yeah.
And then a lot of issues.
Mm.
But then as I began to mature and God continued that process, he began to work on my words, how I use words, what I would say to people. Because I could be snarky, sarcastic, downright mean, unkind, demeaning, dismissive. I mean, back to so many issues.
Ooh.
And then I realized in this season of my life, he's working on how I think.
Mm.
How I think. And I realized I was just thinking about this the other day, why it's so important, because Jesus says, out of the overflow of your heart, your mouth will speak. In other words, what's going on inside really does matter. And God continues to work on, I talked to you a couple of weeks ago about the less than thinking when you meet someone and there's some judgment that your brain makes that they are less than you. And scripture teaches us the opposite. It says esteem others as greater than you. And I'm like, I just want to go to greater than thinking. Like everyone I meet, greater than. How can I serve? How can I encourage? All that to say, perfection, holiness is the unattainable destination because I will slide at some point. Marlena can attest to that.
I remember the song. By the way, just got to throw this in just so I don't forget because it's just comical.
Because we're old and we will forget.
Oh, yes, I learned randomly. I discovered who was doing the background vocals in that song.
Now I wondered that today. Who was?
You would never guess.
Garfunkel?
Oh. No, they split up 7 years earlier.
Okay.
The Oak Ridge Boys. I'm not lying.
The Oak Ridge Boys, weren't they a gospel group?
The Oak Ridge Boys are singing the background vocals on Sliding Away.
Which makes the last verse very interesting. God only knows. God makes his plan. The information's unavailable to the mortal man. We work our jobs, collect our pay. We think we're gliding down the highway, but in reality, we're sliding away. That particular verse, which I have a lot of disagreement with, because he's almost arguing that we are pawns on the chessboard. God's got a plan that we don't have any idea about. We're just down here earning paychecks, thinking but God's doing his thing. Part of it, I agree with in terms of sovereignty, and God has a plan that I can never fully understand.
Well, even
to say that the information's not available to the mortal mind. God's given us so many informative ways. Scripture, people, the Spirit that speaks to
Right.
us. Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice." It's not that God is far away, giving no information.
Watching us from a distance. Well, no,
right,
right.
exactly. Bette Midler, right.
But it's that part truth.
Part truth, yeah.
He doesn't give us the information very often that we really want. In other words, even while we're slip sliding, this is one of the even if you go, this is one of the biggest mysteries. The suffering,
Yep.
regret, people divorce, bail on us, stab us in the back, um, uh, human suffering, and so on. Well, very often, like even Job asked God, and God didn't give him a lot of information on what. So there's this.
God asked him 84 questions he had no answer
Right.
to without ever answering Job's questions.
So it's this.
Which was a valid question, I thought.
If you're looking saying, yeah, the information that there's no information, yes, I've thought that, okay, no, but very often, particularly as it relates to suffering and sliding away, he doesn't give us all the answers that we'd like. He sort of is he wants us to trust him as the answer without having all the answers.
And scripture even indicates there's a time for when God reveals his plan. Paul
Yes.
talks about this mystery of the ages that has now been revealed. So for years, no one understood the plan. The plan was introduced all the way back in Genesis 3, but no one really understands the plan.
Just went over.
And then when Jesus comes to effect the plan, everyone goes, "No, that's not the plan. That's clearly not
it's not a
plan.
good plan.
It's a bad plan.
It's a terrible plan."
Including his disciples. "Jesus, you're not going to die.
No,
got to stop talking about
that's
that.
a terrible plan.
Terrible plan."
Right.
So maybe it is that, it's the Jack Nicholson, "You can't handle the truth."
Right.
Because I've thought for years, what if God had told Job, "Well, actually, I was in a little bit of a wager with Satan, and you were sort of collateral damage in the middle of it."
Doesn't help.
Yeah, Job would be like, "What?" So to be clear, yeah, I mean, it's that. But I do love that God is working his plan. It is that reality that, and I've said it many times, like, even if I don't understand what is it? I don't understand the will of God.
Right.
I can always trust the work of God. One of my favorite verses I've told you before is, Jesus said, "My Father is at work to this day, and I too am working." This idea that God just like spun the world into existence and then is watching, he's working. According to Jesus, he's working every day, not taking a day off, not even the Sabbath day. He's always at work. Well, I just love that. That's very comforting to me.
Yep.
Always at work. I may not understand his will, may not understand the plan. I might even think it's a bad plan, but I know he's at work.
And I think the thing that with the closing, it's an odd, if the idea is God does have the answer, whatever he tells us or doesn't, he does have the answer. And when he speaks at different points, because there's the truth of song, even if I look at that last, work our jobs, collect our play, believe we're guiding down the highway, I think of the rich fool, Jesus' parable. Oh my gosh, I'm working, and my crops.
You this morning?
Right, the crops are coming in.
I'm gliding down the highway.
I'm gliding down the highway, and God says, "No, you're slip sliding away.
Yeah,
you're going to slip slide right away tonight." And it's the idea God is in charge of the story.
Yes.
Doesn't give us all the information we'd like.
Yeah.
But the information that he does give is be rich toward me, trust me, turn to me, look to me. And to me, this is with your regret, with the relational things that didn't work out, with the failures, with all the slip sliding, there's this welcome of God, there's this grace. The slip sliding is the thing that we think we're gliding, we think everything's great, we think we can do it, we're good enough on our own, we've got this plan, we're going to make it work. And there's almost this grace to the slip sliding if it will bring us slide us into the arms of God.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think my closing thought was,
Finish this out here, Bruce.
well,
Take it home.
don't
Preach.
ever allow the feeling of futility to make you think that life is all just random fate. I do
Sure.
believe one of the beautiful gifts that God's given us is agency, the power to decide, the power to choose things. And I think this is where I am theologically. I think we have a lot more freedom within the will of God to do all sorts of things and things that we want to do. And it's not just that we're just pawns on a chessboard being
Yep.
used by God or taken advantage of. But we have power. We have agency. Jesus has all authority. He says, "Now I'm giving it to you." Jesus says, "I'm the light of the world." Then he says, "You're the light of the world. I want you to go do stuff. I want you to do stuff with your life. I want you to bring the kingdom of God to earth." And to me, that's that beautiful invitation. I'm not just living life with no purpose. I can everything that I do can have purpose. I was talking this weekend. My theme on the trail was smaller things. And I did talk about smaller barns as part of that.
Okay.
But the idea was think smaller. Think smaller. Because Jesus talks about if you're faithful in little things, literally tiny things, then you can be entrusted with much. But if you're unfaithful in these little things, then you can't be entrusted with much. And I thought about the little things, and I talked to folks this weekend about secret things, the things that God only sees. Jesus says, this is a tiny thing. Think about this. He says, if you even give someone a cup of cold water in my name,
Right.
I tell you, you will certainly not lose your reward. And I'm like, the little things matter so much to God. So don't just think that it's futile. I'll never be the Christian I want to be. I'll never be the follower that I want to be. I'm always flip side. And focus, just keep doing the small things. That was part of even my own journey right now. What are the small things that God's inviting me into? And keep doing those. I don't have to be an international evangelist doing crusades,
Yeah.
but I can do small things every day.
And when I think about it, if I come around, it's a great finish to the song because in that song, multiple verses, more than one verse, there's to me someone who doesn't believe in that agency.
Yeah.
I lie in bed and think about things about it, but I'm paralyzed. Regret has blinded me to my agency, what I can do today. Even
Good point. Even the Father.
The Father.
Yep.
Who comes and it's too late. I can't. No agency.
Yep.
For all the mistakes you've made, you can start over with your son. You can make a new life. You
can stay with your wife.
Right. You can, or if he bailed, your life is not over. You can still move forward. You can
quit your job and not collect your pay. I'm not sure that was helpful, but
it wasn't.
It's back to agency, because sometimes in my coaching, particularly in my coaching ministry, I've encouraged people to quit their job because it's killing them. And I'm like, I know you won't collect your pay, and I know it's unsure and uncertain, and it's back to the lead on good shepherd. I'm going to follow the Father into the great unknown. Don't know where we're headed, but
that's our finishing thought. Quit your job today.
Quit your job and don't collect your pay, because slowly
you're slip sliding away.
I feel like we should do more at the end.
I was pressing it.
Until next week, when we come up with a better song.
You don't stand a chance.